Melanated Minds bring together men and women on a melanated minds journey to embrace self-love and empowerment through understanding and taking care of their mind, body, and soul. Melanated Minds is an exclusive community that uplifts and supports one another. The network made for us. Join the Melanated Minds Network today.
Stigma to help to hope, challenging the myths and the misconceptions of suicide. Next slide, please. The three things that we're going to just hit on, and you'll be able to track this yourselves just to kind of monitor what we're talking about. We'll have conversation about the stigma, the worldview, the help, how we can challenge the myths and misconceptions so that we can get help for ourselves or give help to others, and then hope. In order to help others cope better, we have to find hope in it. And I think in collaboration through this conversation, hopefully we can find that. Next slide, please. We want to make sure that we hear and see these key definitions for our conversation. The first one is suicidal ideation, which refers to thinking about, considering, or planning a suicide event. An attempt is a non-fatal, self-directed, potentially injurious behavior with an intent to die because of said behavior. What is suicide exactly? It's known also as unaliving, the act of intentionally causing one's own death. Mental illness is a clinical significant disturbance in an individual's cognition, emotional regulation, or behavior. Each of these definitions I want you to keep in the forefront of your mind as we are in conversation. This is not an easy topic to talk about, which is why it's important that when you hear these things said from myself or anyone else, you're aware in the back of your mind of what exactly they are saying. We all know and we all hear how social media plays a role in taking a definition or taking a word or taking something that they heard someone say, and now everybody uses the word narcissist or uses the word cognitive development or anything else. And sadly, people are not trained to use the word because they have not even learned a definition. They've heard somebody say it and they've run with it, but we want to make sure that we're empowered with information. I think that's what each of us have tried to do today. And we just want to make sure that we are moving in the direction of knowing what it is that we're discussing. So next slide, please. What is a stigma? A stigma is a set of negative and often unfair beliefs that a society or a group place on something. Next slide, please. The suicide worldview. The suicide worldview is just what we're going to discuss now is just statistics. The next slide. We want to understand how suicide is the 12th leading cause of death in the U.S. In 2020, there were approximately 45,979 American deaths by suicide. However, worldwide, there were approximately 1.2 million. The thing about the statistics also we want to keep in mind is that they are behind. And the main reason why is because people fail to report. People don't know if it was an attempt. People don't know if they passed away from a natural cause. There was no letter left. There was no medication found or something of that nature. They can speculate, but that doesn't always feed into the statistics. Also, especially in the African American community, we are a little more sensitive in releasing the information, much like cancer used to be a bad term back in the day. When someone had cancer or AIDS even, you would just say, oh, they have an illness, or you would substitute AIDS for cancer. So statistics are always something that the data just is not always there for. So it's always behind as information is reported worldwide. You also know that it's illegal in countries like Bangladesh to even find yourself having attempted or completed a suicide attempt. Therefore, a family will not tell, hey, this is what happened, because it leaves that stigma. So what we want to do is we want to break that. We want to have this conversation so that we can break the stigma here and help those that are in need. Next slide, please. Some additional facts about suicide is that the adjusted rate is 13.48 for every 100,000 individuals. Suicide is mainly affected is middle-aged white men, and also men die by suicide 3.88 times more than women. The reason why is because men usually typically use a lethal means, where women use suffocation or medication or things like that. Not to say that's always the case. However, men usually take more advantage of firearms and things of that nature. Meaning, if you know of someone that has access to firearms and you know that they are in a dark space and you know that they're having difficulty processing financial changes, medical changes, relationship changes, or anything like that, and you see them in this withdrawn, isolated space, check on your friends. Don't be afraid to ask the question, hey, and that goes for men and women, hey, are you okay? Are you contemplating? Are you thinking about it? And I'm not going to get ahead of my slides here, but we want to make sure that we are asking those questions, because people are in need of hope, and you could be that hope. There are approximately 130 suicides per day. Males account for, as we've already stated, almost 70% of those in 2020. The firearms, we just discussed that, is at a 52% rate, and especially for men. Next slide, please. Some additional facts. 703 people per year, 1 in 100 deaths in suicide. I know you can read this, so I'm not going to go by it so much, but just so that you have the statistics and conversation, again, in the back of your mind, depression sufferers are 20% more likely to pass away by this. That's why I said, if you know of someone that's withdrawn, they're isolated, they're coming to you like, hey, I don't know what to do, find them some help. And you can be part of that hope that they're finding, because we have to, we're responsible for taking care, like Trish said, we're responsible for being that group of people that come together and surround people and make sure that they don't feel alone. Next slide, please. The myths and misconceptions. This is one of my favorite parts, merely because we're going to dispel rumors when it comes to this topic. Next slide, please. Knowing the myths and misconceptions. What we want to know is, let me slide this, my apologies. Why is it important to know these myths? I apologize. Because it enhances prevention efforts. Understanding the truth behind suicide myths aids in developing more effective strategies for prevention. It promotes open dialogue. If we dispel myths, we can dispel rumors. If we do that, we can have conversations that are open and can help those that are in need. When we reduce stigma, we correct the misconceptions that people have. We say, hey, that's not true. I was just in a workshop and child, they really said something completely different. So let's try and change. Let's go ahead and try and change the information that's out there, because now we've got the truth out there. It supports effective response and response times. Also, we educating the public that's in church and outside of church, in the churches and in the marketplace. I am a big proponent of making sure that especially the churches are committed to understanding what the Bible says. Why? Because there's so many more misconceptions in the church than are out. The world is getting therapy. The world is journaling. The world is understanding the accountability of their health. The world is doing this, but inside of the church, we start question marking, oh, this isn't God, this isn't about him. And now we have to just be on the front line of the conversation to make sure that everybody from top to bottom is getting the help that they need. Next slide, please. One myth is that talking about suicide can encourage it. The misconception is discussing suicide might plant the idea or increase its likelihood. And my friends, the reality is openly discussing it can actually help prevent it by encouraging awareness and support. This is one of those that I harp on the most. Why? Because so many people think if I say it, it will come. That is totally an inaccuracy and a fallacy. If you say it, what does the word say? The truth shall set you free. So if we're talking about it, we can help people realize that, hey, I'm not out here alone. I'm not in this space by myself. Depression is real. I'm sad. I'm lonely. And I am considering this. And with that consideration, I now can find help, or someone can lead me to help. Next slide, please. A myth: only people with mental health disorders are suicidal. The misconception: suicide only affects those with conditions like depression or bipolar disorder. The reality is that while mental health conditions can be a risk factor, many individuals who attempt or die by suicide may not even have a mental health disorder. Again, it could be an event. It could be something that has happened in someone's life that has caused this. It does not, we goes back to us labeling people narcissistic or anything else, and it could be something totally different. We have to come to to grips with, or come to terms with, there are different reasons why people feel like they no longer want to be here. There's something in their life that has triggered them, and it does not have to be a mental health episode. It can simply be, I'm sad. Or it can simply be, my family's in a bad place. It can simply be, I'm broke. I went from a millionaire to having nothing. It can be anything, and we have to stop putting labels on why people are doing this and just try to find the help. Next slide, please. And you're going to hear me repeat that: find the help, because that's what I want us to take away. Find the help, either be a resource or find the resource for ourselves and others. So if I keep saying that, just know it is very much intentional. Another myth: suicide happens without warning. Misconception: there are no signs that someone is considering suicide. The reality is there are often warning signs, but they can be subtle or mistakenly attributed to other things. A warning sign, and we're going to get to this later, but just one of them: if someone is giving their things away, if I love shoes, which I do, I love clothes, and I just start suddenly clearing out my closet and I'm giving you things, and I'm giving Dr. Shamar, I just start handing all my shoes over to you like, girl, here you go. That's something you have to be concerned about, because that's something I love. That's something that I cherish. And if I'm cherishing this, I'm actually possibly, not always the case. Again, we don't want to overcompensate, but we want to ask the question, hey, are you considering suicide? Ask the question. Hey, I see that you're down. And I also noticed that you gave me something that's very valuable to you. That's your favorite piece of jewelry, or that's your favorite item that I know you cherish. Why did you think to give me this? Why did you think that I'm so worthy of having this thing that you cherish so much? Ask those questions, because it will help them be able, if nothing else, see, I'm not alone. Somebody saw me. Somebody noticed me. Somebody recognized that I'm in this space of despair. Next slide, please. A myth: suicide people always want to unalive themselves. The misconception is, if someone is suicidal, they have determined a wish to die. The reality, my friends, my sisters on this call, many who are suicidal are conflicted or ambivalent. They don't necessarily want to. They just know they're in pain, and they know that if this happens, the pain may end. Why? Because it's final. The sad part is that it may be too final for what it is that they're going through. But that's where, once again, we become the hope. I always say this, and I say this where therapy is one of those things that I am an advocate for. I push it for friends, family, and others. I do. For the saints and the ain'ts, I do it because I want anybody that is feeling that low place to find some way to crawl out of it. And what does that mean? That means that the church can offer ways of hope, but therapy, journaling, all of the things that we've talked about today can offer ways to cope. And so you've got hope on one side, you've got coping on the other. And when they marry each other, when they come into agreement and they come conjoined in your spirit, it's a mind, body, and spirit thing. That's what we've been talking about. It's not one thing that needs to be helped. That's why God says, love me with your mind, your body, and your spirit. If one of them is off in alignment, you wonder why things are going awry in your relationship with God or with people. It's because something is out of whack. And just like your back, if your back is out of whack, you have trouble walking. If your vision is out of whack, you have trouble seeing. So what you want to do is bring all of these things into alignment with who you are, where you're supposed to be, and where you are trying to go, so that you can let go of some of these pains and not be so final. Next slide, please. Improvement, a myth. Improvement following a crisis means the risk is over. The misconception: if someone seems better after a period of being suicidal, the danger has passed. The reality is sometimes a person might feel a sense of relief or renewed energy to make plans after deciding to attempt, and the risk can remain high. Just because stay with them. Stay with them for a little while. Make sure that they've got the help that they need. There it is again. Make sure that they've gotten the help that they need. If it's hospitalization, if it's medication, if it's therapy, if it's being the part of their group, their recovery group. Dr. Shamar and I are working on a recovery group for suicidal victim attempt persons, those that are recovering from suicide and attempt or ideation. We want to make sure that those spaces are available for people, because so many times we have workshops for people that are Alcoholics Anonymous. We have workshops and support groups for people that are Drug Anonymous. We have support groups for even those that are pyromaniacs. We have these support groups, but we don't have people who have conditions of ideation. We need to make sure that people are wrapped and understand that they have a system or a group or people that are willing to fall in line with them and love on them, and know that just because the fire tried to get snuffed out, is not out. And since you're here, we're going to support you and try and get you the support and help that you need. Next slide, please. A new myth: people who die by suicide are selfish or cowardly. The misconception: suicide is a selfish act by someone who is just trying to escape their problems. The reality, my friends, is that suicide is often the result of pain, despair, and overwhelming feelings of inability to cope. It is what it is. We've talked about it. They just don't, the person, I am a survivor. It is an overwhelming feeling, and trying to find ways to cope by yourself, it's just not in the cards. But we have to understand it's not selfish to me. It wasn't selfish to me. I didn't think it was. I thought actually I was relieving my friends and family of the pain that they were dealing with me. So we have to understand that it is a different mindset. It is a different structure of thinking, but we have to be there to help. And go ahead to the next slide, please. Another myth: young children cannot have these thoughts. Misconception: suicide is an adult problem. Young children don't comprehend or consider it. The reality is, and while less common, children can experience thoughts or feelings of such. And so much, my first reaction of suicide was actually in the 4th grade. And that was because I'll never forget his name. And I mentioned his name in prayer, or I mentioned his families for him in prayer. Blair Atherton. He was a 5th grader in my elementary school in Louisville, Kentucky. And he took his own life. And when he did so, I remember going, wow, I've been doing all those things that he did. I've been doing all of those things that want my life to end as well. And the problem with that was I didn't have a name for it until the 4th grade. I didn't have a name for what I was doing to myself until the 4th grade. And it was in that moment my eyes opened, not to change, but to, wow, I got a name for what I'm doing. That's why it's important to have the conversations. If people, or if you're seeing signs, you're seeing the symptoms, have the conversations. Next slide, please. A myth: once suicidal, always suicidal. Misconception: if someone has been suicidal in the past, they'll always harbor these thoughts. But the reality is, my friends, is that many people who have suicidal thoughts or attempts go on to live long, fulfilling lives after receiving appropriate support and treatment. Next slide, please. Suicides peak during the winter holidays. The misconception, the holiday season has the highest rate of suicide. And the reality, this is a big one. Contrary to popular belief, suicide rates tend to be lower during the winter holidays and peak in the spring. We have noticed now in our research that there is a shift. It used to be, yes, it was winter holidays. It was the October through December time period in isolation. People are now what they talk about, they're hunkering down for the winter. They're going, recluse because of the season. However, we're noticing that the trend is now year long, and that's sad. But now that we see the trend, we have to acknowledge the trend so that we can help those that are affected by the trend. It's not just in the evening, in the end of the year. It's throughout the year. We need to be there for people. Next slide, please. The myth, the Bible speaks that you are going to hell for suicide. Misconception, the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill, is often cited as evidence against suicide. The original Hebrew text of the commandment refers specifically to murder, not self-killing. The reality is it's important to note that it does not explicitly say that it is a sin. Suicide is a sin. This is important to me because when I finally confided in someone and I went to my youth pastor and told him what was going on in my mind, he said, "You going to hell." The thing about that is because I was connected to the church enough, it was okay that I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to go to hell. But after time, I didn't care. I was like, hey, if this is where I'm going to go, that's what I'm living on earth. So I'm all right to go on ahead and go. And so we have to understand that the Bible even talks about suicide. This is why help is so important. You all know the story of Paul and Silas in the jail. When they were in the jail and the earthquake happened and the doors fell and the bars on the doors fell and the lights went out. And then the jailer woke up to black smoke and darkness. He had a knife to himself because he was about to take his own life. When he did that and Paul and Silas saw him, do you all know what he screamed out? Paul screamed out, "Stop, stop." Why? Because first of all, that's good to know that the Bible hit on suicide. Secondly, it's good to know how we are to intervene. We are to get involved. We are to say, stop. We are to say, I'm here. His next words are, we are here. They could have left. They could have escaped. They could have been about their business. Their life moved on to the nether country, but they didn't. They said, brother, you are in need of help, and we have the help that you can be. First of all, that you can receive. First of all, we here. Second of all, let me tell you about Jesus. Now, if that doesn't make you excited to know that your God loves you enough to know that if you are experiencing those type of thoughts, he thought it not a robbery to put this type of conversation in the Bible for us to look at, to say, okay, so if I'm going through this, I just need, I can intervene as a bystander and say, stop. Or if somebody is here and needs help, I can receive that stop. I want everybody right now on this call just to yell out, stop, stop. Because our brains sometimes are in overdrive with everything that's going on, social media, this, our families and that, money and this, money troubles and that. God is saying we need to stop sometimes while the things are going on and just say, God, see about me. Send a friend to see about me. Help me to see about myself and be accountable and responsible for myself. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I'm a preacher. I get excited about the word of God. Take it to the scripture once again. Therefore, I tell you, before you will be forgiven for every sin and blasphemy, but blasphemy is the only spirit will not be forgiven. This just simply, again, agrees and aligns to the word. We have to understand blasphemy is the only thing that you will not be forgiven for. Now, this is not a green card, a card to tell you to go do anything to your life. However, this is letting you know that the Holy Spirit can love you through these ideations. He can love you through these attempts. He can love you through all of this, and he wants to love on you and put his care and comfort around you. But we have to be willing to get the help so that it's kind of like a thing of Kool-Aid, right? Y'all like Kool-Aid? Anybody like Kool-Aid? I like red Kool-Aid. That's my favorite. So if you've got Kool-Aid and you've got a nice pitcher of Kool-Aid and it's filled to the brim and you haven't added the sugar yet, what do you have to do to get the sugar in? You have to pour out some of the Kool-Aid in order to get the sweetness in. My brothers and my sisters, if whoever's on this call, in order to get the sweetness of God in, and in order to get the therapy in order to get the journaling to make sense, in order to be accountable for yourself, you've got to pour out some of that stuff that's bad on the inside so that you can get some of the therapy in, get some of the godliness in, get some of the hope in, get some of the coping in, so that now you've got some of that sweet stuff and it's mixing in now with the bad and the hard and the trying and the difficult stuff. And now the difficult stuff doesn't seem so hard because you've got people surrounding you. You've got your hand in it that's helping you, and you are allowing yourself to receive the benefits of no longer holding on to everything in that jar of Kool-Aid. You're now poured out some of that water and flavor and poured out some of that water and color. And now you're able to add that sugar, add that temperance, add that hope, add some cope, add some God, add some of your friends that are there for you. Next slide, please. Another misconception is that there is a cookie cutter system to this thing. It's not. B is what it is. There is no real answer why people choose suicide over any other thing. There is no reason. There's no rhyme. You have to go to that individual and say, what is going on in your life that is causing you to think this way, that's causing you to want to act this way, behave this way? It is individual, and individuals need individual attention. Next slide, please. Suicide circumstances. Once again, history, we've got crisis in the last 2 weeks, intimate partner problems, alcohol dependence. These are just some of the reasons why people do what they do. Next slide. Once again, warning signs. I told you about the giving away of clothes. You've got a negative self-view, helpless, isolation, aggressive and irritable. They have the means to firearms. They feel like a burden, drastic mood changes, giving away things, substance abuse. This is just some reasons and warning signs you need to look for. Next slide, please. All right. Now I want us to do an exercise. That's my little guy telling us we need to exercise our brains, right? And exercise our hearts and exercise our abilities. I want everybody to write the word suicide down in the chat, please. Everybody. I'm gonna even write it. The reason why I had everybody do this is because suicide is a word that actually people are afraid to say. They're afraid to say it because they feel like if I say it, it will come. If I say it, it's going to be something, it's taboo, even in our own lives. So we have to be willing to, if we're wanting to be there for others and have the conversations, not be afraid of it. We're not afraid to say, are you a pyromaniac? You gonna burn my house down? We're not afraid to say, are you a kleptomaniac? You gonna steal my stuff? And then it comes to suicide and everything's being stolen from you, including your life. And we're like, oh, are you okay? No. Are you dealing with suicidal thoughts? Have you attempted suicide? It's okay. Let me get you some help. Let me be here for you. Let me be here with you until I can hand you over to the next person. We have to get comfortable in saying the words that are necessary to get people the help that they really need. Next slide, please. Hope is near. Next slide, please. It's here. The 3 B's. The 3 B's are be present, be a listener, and be proactive. Next slide, please. This is how we can be here. This is how we can show hope. We can show empathy. We can practice emotional intelligence. And you all have the slides, so I'm not going to go into that too much, but I want you to know that that is very significant for yourself and being able to recognize in others. Also, having compassion. Being there for someone, not assuming that, again, you going to hell, so I can't talk to you. No, get them the help they need. I mean, as simple as that. Christ is compassion. He was compassion. He showed compassion and grace on us when we didn't deserve it. So why would we dare not show it to someone who is in need? And we know it. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I'll let you all read that one on your own. It just explains what a definition of emotional intelligence is: managing oneself successfully. Next slide. Next slide. Okay. EI skills that you should be aware of in yourself or in others is having self-awareness, understanding who you are, having self-regulation. If you can't regulate yourself, that's why you definitely need to be in therapy, because you've got anger issues, or you've got any type of overcompensation issues, and you can't pull yourself back in. Let's go find someone to talk to. Motivation. What does your motivation look like? If I'm seeing low motivation from someone who is highly motivated and self-motivated, let me find out what's going on in their life. What may have changed? I saw something in you, and what's going on your home front that may have changed. I'm just seeing a difference. Let's talk. And it doesn't have to be a therapist. What do friends do? What do girlfriends do? What do guy friends do? They just talk. We're communal, we're relational, and we should want to find out from others what it is that's going on in their life when we see changes. Once again, empathetic. Be empathetic to yourself, and to others, understanding I may not have been there, but I can show you grace. I can show you mercy. I can show you some compassion to your circumstances. And another form of emotional intelligence is your social skills. How do you interact with others? Are you forceful? Are you on one extreme or the other? I'm really shy and really aggressive. Let's try to find that middle ground, and so that we can be better suited and suitable for relationships in our lives. Next slide, please. This is just a quote that I really like from this book, Let Your Life Speak. It says, there may be moments in life when we are so unformed that we need to use values like an exoskeleton to keep us from collapsing. So many of us are trying, and we're not true. We really are just one thought, one conversation, one idea away from just collapsing. And there may be moments in life where we are so unformed. We think we got it all together, but we really don't. And we just need someone to talk to. Go find your people, or go find your person. I always say therapists are like shoes. When you're in the store, they might look good, and you walk into that therapist and they might look good, sound good. But if it doesn't fit good, take it back. Go find another pair that works, because there is somebody out there that wants to help you, and that can be the good and perfect fit for you. Next slide. Be a listener. Offer effective listening ear. Don't listen to respond. Don't listen to agitate. Just listen. Just be open. Listen. Give hurting individuals space to express their feelings of guilt, grief, and loneliness. Acknowledge pain and utilize the relationship with God as a source of strength. Next slide, please. These are just some of I just really like this illustration, as it just explains what we might go through. Next slide, please. Understanding grief is important. So many people think, oh, we know the stages of grief. Once again, it's one of those things we've learned from Kubler-Ross, and we pull it and we see it online and we grab it and we just start talking about it. And we think we hear denial, depression, anger, bargaining, acceptance is how grief or loss is explained. However, the road we normally get, who else has gotten this road over here to the right that's all squiggly, and it just doesn't make sense. You go back and forth between denial and anger. You get depressed, and then you go back to mad, and then before you finally accept. That's real life. But that's why it's important to have people in our circle. Next slide. This is just one of those quotes to untying that thought process we just saw, or that road that was just discombobulated. Discontinue the need to being so deep. Some people are just trying to swim. It's self-explanatory. Next slide, please. And lastly, be proactive. Find resources. Don't leave somebody out there. If you know they are cold, you would not give them a blanket. If you know someone's hungry, you would not give them something to eat. If they needed to be visited in a hospital, most of us would get up in a heartbeat. But guess what? We need to be the same, and we are those resources, and we are those referrals. Let's try to find our neutral and say, hey, I can at least give you this phone number, 988, so that you can find somebody to talk to. Next slide, please. because here we are at 988. There is an emergency number. Everybody's familiar with 911. Back last year, actually almost 2 years now, they came up with a crisis number of 988. I want everybody to remember that. You've got 911 for active emergencies, and if someone is actively injuring themselves, but you also have 988 that somebody can call in the midst of a crisis. You can also call if you are serving someone in a crisis to find out what it is that you can do to better and best serve them. So this is a resource for everybody and anybody on this call. Keep this in your back pocket and make sure that you are able to serve those people, help if you are ever needed in that time. Next slide, please. Referrals, you've got NAMI, you've got Serene Counseling, Dr. Shamara on this call, myself, and then we also have Dr. Trish. We also have all of the presenters here. They have content that we can offer you to help you in coaching you and loving on you back to health. Next slide, please. Just some other ways of honoring being present for people. Next slide, please. You all have these in your packets. My story of why. I am a suicide survivor. I had many attempts. I was in the hospital over the 4th of July holiday once. My family had to come see me in the hospital. I remember on the day that I was going to finalize everything, I had my letter written and everything. And I actually was praying to God, God, I just need a hug. I need a hug from you. I need a hug from somebody, because I had grown up very early, if you will. My mom passed at 7, so I became mom on the day that she passed. And so my father and family stopped seeing me as a child because I was mama. And in my senior year of high school, I was like, I'm done with this. I'm tired. I'm over it. And I had prayed for this hug. And in the hallway of my high school, this random person walks up to me. Well, first of all, I slammed my locker shut. I slammed it so hard that even when I say this story, I hear the locker slamming, because that was going to be the last impressionated sound that I wanted to hear, was finality. And this person in the hallway gave me a hug and walked away. But that was God hearing my prayer. And because of that, I had tore up my letter, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So for the last 20 plus years, I have been passing out hugs and saying, I love you. That's where I love you, the movement come from me, is because I want people to know, hey, you're not in this by yourself. And and people have told me I haven't had a hug in years. No one has told me I love you in years. You never know how your presence, just listening, being present, actively present, can change someone's life. Just a smile, just a hug, just a friendly, how are you? Sitting, waiting and finding out what's going on, and then moving on. But just being present can change. Next slide, please. Project Semicolon was just something that I just wanted you to share and be aware of. In literature, you actually know a semicolon is a thought that is ended, but is still kind of as a continuation. If you ever see someone with a semicolon tattoo or ring or shirt or anything, just know that they are a survivor. They are someone who tried to period in their life, but comma is continuing. So celebrate them, honor them. You may not do it in person, but at least in the back of your head, say, I'm still glad you're here. Next slide, please. Listening should be used as a love language towards yourself and to those you love. Don't forget about yourself. If you're willing to be there for others, and you're willing to stand by others and support and provide help and hope and show them ways to cope, make sure that you're listening to yourself too. Make sure you're your best advocate for yourself. When you need help, you go find it. If you're stranded in spirit and stranded and scattered in thought, go find help. If you need emotional support, go find it. If you need financial, whatever it is, spiritual, financial, social, whatever it is, go after it, because the word tells us to love your neighbor as yourself. That means you have to love yourself in order to be prepared for your neighbor. Next slide, please. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I love you all. If you need anything, I'm available for you at www.ilwthemovement.com or .org. Sorry.
I do what I do.
Melanated Minds bring together men and women on a melanated minds journey to embrace self-love and empowerment through understanding and taking care of their mind, body, and soul. Melanated Minds is an exclusive community that uplifts and supports one another. The network made for us. Join the Melanated Minds